It's a pleasure now to introduce to you, my left-hand side, Neil Harris. Neil Harris, who teaches bibliography and library studies at this university, where he's also been head of the Dipartimento di Storia e Tutela, no longer, has been. You're a has-been head. Formerly he read English at Balliol College, Oxford, and he did his PhD in comparative literature at Leicester, and what they call a perfezionamento at the Scuola Normale Superiore in Pisa. After early work on Milton and the Italian chivalric tradition, he's best known for his work on the Italian printed Renaissance book, especially for the Bibliografia dell'Orlando Innamorato, and he's also a regular contributor to La Bibliofilia. So recently he has been publishing on the Hypnorotamagia Polyphily, and on blind impressions and reset sheets. He published not only in La Bibliofilia, but also publishes regularly in Gutenberg Jahrbuch, and it's always a pleasure to read those articles. And furthermore, he's also a regular guest at in Lyon at the Institut d'Histoire du Livre, where he teaches analytical bibliography and also paper and watermarks and how they can be used for as bibliographical evidence. But now, without further ado, I give the floor to Neil to talk about affordable books, and I think we all agree that this still is a big issue. How affordable are books? So I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Neil. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Right. Compared with the wonderful PowerPoints we've seen so far, I am much more of a Neanderthal, and so very, very primitive. A commodity appears at first sight a very trivial thing and easily understood. Its analysis shows that it is in reality a very queer thing, abounding in metaphysical subtleties and theological niceties. So far as it is a value in use, there is nothing mysterious about it, whether we consider it from the point of view that by its properties it is capable of satisfying human wants, or from the point that those properties are the product of human labour. It is as clear as noonday that man, by his industry, changes the forms of the materials furnished by nature, in such a way as to make them useful to him. The form of wood, for instance, is altered by making a table out of it. Yet for all that, the table continues to be that common, everyday thing, wood. But as soon as it steps forth as a commodity, it is changed into something transcendent. It not only stands with its feet on the ground, but in relation to all other commodities, it stands on its head and evolves out of its wooden brain grotesque ideas, far more wonderful than table turning ever was. I spared you the original German, which is even more intricate, but that is Karl Marx, writing in Das Kapital. Not quite the most recent of texts, but still one of the best texts. Sorry. Oops. Right. Sorry, as I said, I'm very... Oops. Something's happened that shouldn't have happened. I'll just go back. Oh, right, sorry. Right. Sorry, it's not... A window in Via Mercato Vecchio. Commodities. Very nice commodities. Don't know if you can see the prices. Borsa Piccola, €1,990. Borsa Grande, €2,300. Expensive, I think, by my standards. Is that affordable? Well, it's a bit over a month of my salary. It's a bit over a month of my salary. When I last looked, I pulled down just under €4,000 a month. Or to put it in more reasonable terms, i.e. my gross annual salary, as is done in most countries, my gross annual salary is about €80,000, right? The Italian taxman immediately gets 29,000 of those. And so we work out with roughly 4,000 a month, but of course that is on 13 months. So we have what we can call the enhancement of raw materials by work. And of course a book is one of the best examples of the entire process, because the materials with which we make books begin as waste, either rags in the case of paper or animal skin in the case of parchment. This stuff gets taken, collected, recycled, enhanced by human labour. Compared to the final cost of the book is a very, very long way from the cost of the rags. Now, if we look at the prices of books, there's a sort of classic markup, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. A third for the printer, materials, paper, ink, work done in the printing shop, i.e. typesetting, proofreading, the actual work done by the pressman. And then of course the printer will bill in another factor, which might be long-term investments, type, rent, buying new machinery. A third for the bookseller, distribution, advertising, sale, but also the bookseller's profit. And the final third is the publisher. What does the publisher do? The publisher just anticipates money. And so that third is almost pure profit. But you can make a lot of money out of books, or you can make ruinous mistakes and lose all your money. Somebody once described publishing as a more amusing and quicker way of losing all your money than betting on the horses. And I think that's probably true. Now, of course, Renaissance publishers and printers often have these 3/3 all under the same roof. They're always booksellers, they're often printers. So they can sometimes play with these margins more than modern publishers who separate the three activities can do. And this is going to bring us to Venice. Venice printing begins 1469, we all know that, and of course it is what Christina likes to call an incunable.com revolution. Secret of Venice's success. Printing arrives there relatively late compared to Germany, but within 10, 15, 20 years it's the biggest producer in Europe. What's the reasons for its success? 3 can be spotted. Innovative technology. Venice masters very quickly techniques like printing in red and black, printing music, so on, which remain their very specific spheres of Venetian publishing well into the 18th century. Capital. The main problem of, it's already been said, of early printers is being underfinanced, not having enough capital. In Venice, because of trade with the Eastern Mediterranean, you have a society that's very used to the balance of investment and risk and is able to assess it quite acutely. And the third factor that Venice has in common with the other 4 great producing cities in the 15th and 16th century, in order, Paris, Lyon, Bâle, Antwerp. These are the 5 cities that get their books into other countries on a big scale. Any curator of early books in Italian libraries will tell you that the foreign books tend to come from Paris, Bâle, Antwerp, and Lyon. other cities outside Italy are generally fairly scarcely represented. All these 5 cities have in common good distribution by water. Good distribution by water. And that's very important for Venice. Venice can send books down the coast, or they can send them along the Po Valley, up the rivers, and you can get a lot further by canal and rivers in the 15th century than you can today. So, distribution by water. Right, let's cut to the chase. 1810, approximately, in Venice, they're having a big clean out. Old papers, rubbish. Don't quite know whether it was the Palazzo Ducale or the attics of the Duomo. There are a lot of secret rooms, and anyway, the 2 buildings are contiguous, and this pops up. A bookseller's ledger. A bookseller's ledger. Oops. I love this. A bookseller's ledger. At the top, written Zornale. Zornale, a journal, a bookseller's, an account book. It's bound in its original cover, and so, if we go to the back of it, not my day with computer, okay, how do I get out of this? There we go. Hand drawn on the back cover is a bookseller's mark. Oh, well, no, I've started something. Yes. I need action. Right. Sorry. I need to go back.
Yeah.
It's all right. I've got it. The situation under control. Says he.
No.
We've got a bookseller's mark. Now, if I just do that, you can see it's the old symbol for a merchant. Right. A globe with the double cross and 2 letters. MF. Wasn't identified for a while because this manuscript is important, was recognised fairly on. It went initially to the Archivio di Stato in Venice and then was transferred to the Marciana Library, where it is today with pressmark Ital 1145. And this, somebody in the Marciana, we don't know who, recognised that it was the same mark as appears on this printed book. It's a printer, probably not even a printer, just a publisher and a small bookseller who we know as Francesco de Madiis or Francesco Maggi or Francis May, if you want to anglicise him excessively. We don't know much about him. His name appears on about 10 editions published in Venice, generally in collaboration with other booksellers and printers from 1484 to 1488. We know that he was married to the daughter of one of the big players in the Venetian publishing industry, Francisco Renna, but his daughter is Cristina Fontana. Renna, Fontana, it's a translation of the name. And we think he seems to have died before 1490. But otherwise we do not know very much about him. Now, Cristina and myself have been working on a project which involves the transcription of this document, this bookseller's ledger, with a complete commentary and interpretation of its contents. We have stalled a bit. We do need to be working a bit harder, don't we, Christina? Yes, we've not been working very hard on this project. Too much running around and talking at conferences. Yes, both of us, very guilty. But we are going to get a move on and get seriously into this project. Now, what's it about? Well, the volume is in what I would call agenda format, right? I.e., it's on what I originally thought were chancery sheets, but I'm beginning to think that they may actually be a size larger and were cut down, right? Now, if you look at it, you've got some entries here. We can take page for the 1st of June. The 1st of June. A di primo giugno. Giugno. We've got the Catholicon. Let's just glance at titles. Catholicon. Dec di Tito Livio, Dante con commento, Ponio Meno, Sexto Clementine Piccolo, Aulogelio, Giuniano, Plinio Literale, Plinio in Latin, Salmista in Greco, Tullius De Officis cum Commento, and Mengo. Now, for each column, so we've got for the 1st of June, 1484, sorry, I should have said that, we've got 11 entries. There are actually 12 titles because Sexto Clementine is actually 2 separate items. And the next column is the number of copies sold. So 1 copy, 1 copy, 1 copy, 1 copy, and then 7 copies of Cicero, somebody's being a bit masochistic, and 7 copies of the Mengo. Now, who's buying them? Well, these are all individual sales. But one person makes a block purchase of some 7 titles altogether, paying in summa 3 ducats, no lire, and 4 soldi. Now, our prices are expressed in the Venetian coinage of the time, which was stabilized in 1471-74 by Doge Niccolo Tron. Instead of allowing the ducat, i.e. the gold coin, to fluctuate against the other currencies, the Venetians went and fixed their money. They said, okay, a ducat from now on is always going to be 6 lire and 4 soldi, or more simply 124 soldi. It's quite important to understand this because quite often we see our bookseller thinking in soldi and then converting the price. We quite often find prices which are 6s, but when we break them down into soldi, we found it's a round figure. Now, this particular model, so 1 ducat is 6 lire 4 soldi, 120 soldi. A lira is 20 soldi, and then we have a coin which we are using, though it's not actually expressed in the Zornale, which is the denaro or the piccolo. Now 12 of these make up 1 soldi because this is the monetary system which the Venetians introduced, and it was enormously successful in the rest of Europe because the French based their livres sous deniers on it, and the English pounds, shillings, and pence, which remained the duodecimal system right up to 1971 in Great Britain, and then they got rid of it, which I think is a pity, because I think we should have that one back. Oh, and maybe Brexit will reintroduce it. Right, how do we do our calculations here? Well, obviously we have to be able to recognize. Now, in a way, the Zornale, once you're familiar with this, it's a rather boring document. It's very sort of repetitive, because if we just look at the rest of the month of June, or we can actually go down to the bottom of the page. Here, for example, you can see the entries for the 3rd of June. Note, there are 2 main hands. This is what we call the first hand. These 3 final entries are actually by a rather different hand, which I think we've only found here on this one page, but we've still got to sort out details along these lines. But you'll see that the pattern is constant of entries recorded day by day, right? 10th of June, Quarta dell'Antonina, Valero Maximo, Peregrinationes Gerusalemme, 2 copies. There seem to be quite a lot of people departing for the Holy Land. They are all buying guidebooks. Right? This is a very expensive book for the amount of paper, so we think there might have been some other element. There's an almanac and so on. Then we have somebody, fatto saldo addito, so somebody is drawing up, doing a sum of all the books taken. We have the Vita Patrum Literale. It carries on like this for several entries. So if we can just look at the rest of June, right? Here we go again. This is another page. Not talking to me. This happens. Computers recognize it's me and they will not talk. Esopo historiado, salmista volgare con exposition, consilium prime, so on, so on. It's all entries along this line. Getting it all down is a big job. But of course, what we've got is a lot of information about prices, because we have in this book roughly, I a huge amount of information about the prices books actually fetched. Now, we've done a rough calculation because Christina worked a long time putting all these entries into an Excel sheet, right? Because our sales run from the 17th of May 1484, which was a Monday, right up to the 15th of January 1488. Now, the shop doesn't seem to have been open every day of the week. Sometimes the owner seems to have gone fishing, which is quite easy to do in Venice, but our rough count for the moment is 6,950 sales. Some of these sales are multiple copies and multiple titles. There are 11,100 titles and roughly, we're saying roughly for the moment, some 25,000 copies. That's a lot of books, and for all these books we have prices. So we have a major quantity of sales. Just imagine getting the printout of all the sales in a Feltrinelli bookshop for a 4-year period, and you've got the problem that we have. There is a lot of data, and it has to be handled. Right, let's look a bit better at some of the things we can do with this data. In primitive again. Right. So, this is what we looked at previously. We can see the Catholicon. We can see the Catholicon. There we go. Beautiful. Thank you. We can see the Catholicon. We can see the entries as we've transcribed them. This is our block entry. We've got prices here. So I've just put the first 3 days in June. Right. Here we go. All these. Let's look more specifically at the 1st of June. We have 12 titles. Now, how do we go about identifying them? What is the book? Well, we've had to adopt necessarily the assumption that it's the Venetian edition closest in time. That's our most economical hypothesis. We will be wrong quite often, but we don't know where we're going to be wrong. It's very difficult to tell. But the Venetian edition closest in time is the most likely hypothesis. So, here I've got these editions. We've identified them. So we've got the title. We can see a bit better what they are. Short title, Balbus Catholicon, 1483. It's in folio format, 356 leaves. Its cost is 6 lire, just a bit less than a ducat. Now, what's the final column? One thing we're doing, which is proving quite important, is to break down and get a cost per sheet of paper. A cost per sheet of paper. So, just take 356, divide it by 2, then we take 6 lire, we divide that. We have expressing the sheet of a cost of paper in denari, because if we do it in soldi, we'll always be dealing with fractions. Denari are much more convenient, they give us more reasonable numbers, because otherwise it would be 0.000 soldi, which is a bit annoying. Denari is a more reasonable coin to use. Now, if you look at that right-hand column, you can see that there is a certain oscillation. We're not having standard cost per sheet. But generally, most of our costs are falling within a 5 to 10 denarii range. Things can be slightly outside, but for example, the Dante Commedia, that's probably the 1484 Ottaviano Scotto. That's the first edition in Venice with Landino's commentary. That's going to get a reasonably high price in the bookshop. That's still something of a novelty. Similarly, the Bonifacius, obviously where we didn't have the prices in the block purchase, we've got them back from other sales elsewhere. The Bonifacius and the Clemens, these are legal texts, they're printed in red and black, they are on larger sheets of paper. That explains why they are more expensive. So, we have got a set of prices. We can price our commodity very, very well, and we can also break it down into the single unit costs. At the same time, we've got to be fairly careful about how we use this mass of data. We have several problems. First of all, we don't really have many other lists with which we can compare it. There is a list of books being offered for sale in Padua in 1480. It's priced in ducats, lire and soldi. It's quite a useful list. But those are prices are being asked for, not prices effectively obtained with sale. We can see, however, that prices 1480 compared to 1484 or 1488 are falling quite sharply. Why? Because there's been a major technological development. Printing presses have shifted from what we call a one-pull to a two-pull press. I won't go into the technology, but two-pull presses are much faster. They can churn out many more printed sheets a day. Suddenly we've got the Venetian publishing industry is struggling for the first time with an overproduction glut, probably at the beginning of the 1480s. Rome had one early on in the 1470s, but Venice still has to really experience this. So, when you've got overproduction, what happens? Prices fall. Prices fall quite quickly. We can see it in the 4-year period of the Zornale. Some prices are coming down. Now, 3 price factors are always going to affect book prices. The first one we've already seen in a way. Paper. The cost of paper, the cost of the sheets, because the paper used in Venice is generally brought in from Lake Garda, that means bring it down the Po and so on. There's transport cost. About these editions we don't have much information about how much was paid for paper, but for example there's an Aldine purchase. In 1498 Aldus buys a ducat, bales of paper for 3¼ ducats. That's 10 reams, 5,000 sheets of paper. That works out at 1 denaro a sheet. That helps. Second factor, major factor, can be distribution. Now, most of these editions here are at 0 kilometers, but there is one exception. Okay, one exception. The Psalterium in Greek. Why is it so expensive? 18 denarii a sheet. Well, it's on royal paper, it's in Greek, it's got printing red and black, but above all, it's imported from Milan. So that is a major cost. The third element that we might forget about looking at in this document, but which is easily has to be remembered, is cost of binding. These are books in unsold sheets. Binding is going to add 50, maybe 100% to our cost. When we do have bound books sold in the Zornale, there is a significant increase in price. Right. How are we going to, can we compare these prices? Yes, there is another major source of Venetian prices. This is the Aldine lists. There are 3 Aldine lists with prices. Let's just look very quickly at the first one with the Greek, selling Greek texts. We can see that Aldus is selling his books printed in Greek. They're understandably much more expensive. If you look at the right-hand column, with significant costs in the number of denarii per every sheet. Sorry. Right? You can see them. And we do actually have the witness of 1498, a university professor, Antonio Urceo, professor of Greek at Bologna. He complains violently about the cost of the Greek Aristotle in 5 volumes. What's he complaining about? Well, the 5 volumes are going to cost us 11 ducats. So, what's his salary? We do actually know his salary. He was paid 100 lire Bolognini when first appointed in 1482, 125, raised to 125 in 1488, and 150 in 1496. What's that worth in ducats? Well, we can convert it. 150 lire Bolognini are worth 47 ducats a year. That's terribly badly paid for a university post. Fortunately, that wasn't his full salary. Professors made their money out of charging students for fees directly when they came to lessons, which I think is a very good system and should be reintroduced. I think we want that. So, what's this worth in real terms? Okay, 10 ducats, we do have other comparisons. 10 ducats is Plotinus' salary as Vatican librarian. 10 ducats will buy you a horse in Rome. So compare that to a car, a city runabout. 5 to 8 ducats is the price a compositor gets in 1470s in Padua. Careful, new, technological, groundbreaking industry. What does an executive get at Apple? Roughly that sort of thing. So I think we can start saying that 11 ducats is roughly a month and a bit of a proper professorial salary. So we have a dilemma. We have the eternal dilemma, which has already been mentioned. Are we going to go for the 2 handbags or the Greek Aristotle? They're roughly going to cost us the same amount, right? So the question, as ever, to buy or not to buy? That is the question. Thank you very much.
Well, think about your marriage. I would go for the handbags.